Today I want to talk about happiness and the law of science. What do I mean by that? In science there's a rule. The rule says if there's an example of it somewhere, anywhere in the universe, then that means it can happen. And so, applied to happiness, if there's someone on the planet who is happy, who's enjoying their life, and life is going well for them, and yet they have tragedy, that means that's a possibility. You can actually have bad things happen to you and still be happy. And as a way of exemplifying that, I want to share two stories of women that I've known in my life. They were my teachers who really helped me grow and learn in life. And they were women, they passed now, they're both gone, but they were wonderful ladies. And let me start with the first one being Verna. Many years ago, I met this wonderful woman, very positive, very upbeat, just reaching out to everyone that she could reach out to, including me. And we once a week would get together for breakfast, and it was just a really wonderful experience. I think we met for several years. And I always looked forward to my Monday breakfasts with Verna. And let me just tell you her story. She had almost died. She had a son who was dead. She had a grandson who was a drug addict. And her husband had died. And she was alone in the world. She had some distant relatives that came once in a while, but mostly she was alone in the world. And yet, with all these health problems and no one left there, she was in a nursing home. And even in that nursing home, most of us would think, a nursing home, what a terrible place to go. And she did not see it that way. She said, I'm there, God kept me here to reach out to the people here. And that's what she did. She would go around just being very positive, very loving. I mean, everyone loved her there. And she was just one of the most wonderful persons I've ever met in my life. Because even though I doubt there's a viewer out there that would trade places with her, she found her life to be replete with joy, happiness, and a lot of that came from her loving others. I mean, everyone really loved this woman because she was so positive, even though she had all that tragedy. And getting back to my original premise of, if science says someone on the planet can do this, then that's a possibility. Whatever you are struggling with, if it isn't as bad as Verna, then that means we too can be happy right now. The second story is of Betty. Different story, but another wonderful lady. What had happened to her, she had almost died when she was 30. She actually did die, and they resuscitated her. When she came back, she had more health problems than you can imagine. I mean, she for the rest of her life, she was basically had to have a cane to get around, and she died at 60. She lived about 30 years, but she looked much older than that. But again, one of the most magical, wonderful women that I ever met in my life. And in her case, she had a very mystical experience when she died, and so when she would meditate, so often those mystical experiences came back to her, and she would just see the joy and beauty in everything, and she would have the most magical experiences because we meditated together, her and I, and a small group would get together and meditate. That's how I get to really know her heart. And even though she had one son who lived in another country, and she had no one else, she reached out. She was very actively involved in a church, helping out there, volunteering, and she just loved people around her. But I think in her instance, what was most magical was how in much depth. I mean, really, she was, having mystical experience, it's very ecstatic, euphoric experiences over and over again, very easily, even though she had countless health problems that were actually causing her pain. So she had so much pain, and yet she had so much ecstatic bliss at the same time. And so as I'm saying that, if some of you are out there listening or know someone that you love, that if they are suffering, or if you're suffering, or if I'm suffering, we can still, even in that suffering, find joy, find peace, and find ecstatic bliss. And since science says that is an option, as long as one person out of the 7 billion on the planet can do that, that means it's an option. Let us together work towards, no matter what life throws us, let us together work towards always finding the beauty, even in the pain. Peace.
Our first question comes to us from Laura, who's from San Diego, California. And she asks, how can you overcome self-doubt and fear to start a new career on the right path of positive thinking and self-assurance? Are there any daily meditations or thought exercises?
Good question, of course. And a lot of people are struggling with that right now. The thing you have to think about is, first, what are you thinking? What's going on inside of here? If there's negative talk and you're not aware of it, it will create affect. It will affect you, affect the people around you, and you may have a much more difficult time getting a job. But if you're aware of it, you can change it. So awareness is always the pivotal thing to use in your growth. What am I doing? Okay. Now that you're aware of what you're doing, and you say, I'm starting to think negatively about finding this job. What do I do? You basically just change your thought. You don't criticize yourself. You don't try to suppress it. You just basically, it's kind of like I'm looking at you and I look over here. That thought comes there and you switch your thoughts over here. Switch it to something positive. Saying, there's a lot of jobs out there and I'm going to get one because I'm good at what I do. It's really, the daily meditation, I think what's helpful there is just focusing on what you want, not what you're afraid of losing. Because if you focus on what you're afraid of losing, that will kind of become your reality. But if you focus on what you want and really visualize that and just feel that coming, that will be the reality that will be much more likely to be created, don't you think?
I do, absolutely. And I think another good thing that you can do to help, and this might sound kind of funny, but I've actually done this and I recommend people to do this, is that if you're having a hard time and you're struggling with kind of that negative self-talk, you can use like an eyeliner like pencil, or you can use, an erasable marker and write on your mirror, like when you're getting ready in the morning, write on your mirror like positive attributes about yourself, things that you know that you're good at. I'm a confident person. I'm good at, even if it has to come down, I'm good at filing things. I'm good at stuffing envelopes, whatever. But hopefully, you can get to the point where you can expand upon that and realize those positive assets that you have, because I'm sure you do have them. You just got to look deep. And when you're having a hard time, you look at those. And every morning, even if you're not having a hard time, you look at those so you can go throughout the day and know and have confidence in yourself that you can do it and that you have wonderful, wonderful aspects about yourself.
And one last thing, if I may suggest, is get a support group that really supports you, people around you that are encouraging to you, loving you. And if they're not doing that, they really shouldn't be in your life that much. So have people around you also being positive, being supportive, and I think you'll find that finding that new job will be much more easy.
We wish you the best of luck and thank you so much for your questions.
Thank you.